we've slowed to a trickle for those coming in. So just wanted to introduce myself, Dee Durham. I'm the current president of Preservation Delaware, and I want to welcome everyone to our first day of our annual conference 2025. For those of you who may not know, although I suspect you all do, Preservation Delaware is the statewide nonprofit which is dedicated to protecting Delaware's historic places. And we do this primarily through educational programs such as our annual conference and public policy initiatives and providing technical assistance for buildings that are endangered or whatnot as we can. We are just a group of volunteers though, and we welcome you to join us on any of our committees or even on our board as well if you're interested. So today our education committee is bringing a series of virtual presentations on a wide array of topics, and we will be recording them. All of our past conferences are available on our YouTube channel, which you can find on our website. We also look forward to welcoming all of you to day 2 tomorrow, which will be in person at the Blue Ball Barn in North Wilmington. And we'll be featuring a talk on the history of the Blue Ball Barn and an update from Eric Hine, who is a board member of Preservation Delaware, but also more importantly, the director of the National Council of Historic Preservation Offices, as well as remarks by Delaware native and CEO of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, Carol Quillen. And Carol will be introduced by her brother-in-law, Mayor John Carney. So it's nice to have that link there and have them joining us tomorrow. So please join us if you are able to. If you don't have tickets yet, you can get them online, or we'll put the link in the chat for those of you who still want to get tickets today. I'd like to give a special shout out to Rebecca Wilson and Kara Smith, who are co-chairs of our education committee, and all the members of our education committee that put together today's conference, and as well as other options we have throughout the year, and Pam Bargren, who is our administrative assistant, who makes it all happen behind the scenes. We really appreciate everything all of you have done to get us here today. And a special thanks, of course, to our sponsors. We have the Delaware Historic and Cultural Affairs, Woodlawn Trustees, South River Heritage Consulting, Homes by PJ Bale, Snow's Painting, and the University of Delaware Center for Historic Architecture and Design. So please extend our thanks to them. And if you see any of them tomorrow, also please thank them. It's only through their support that we can bring programs like this to you free of charge. And so preserving our built and buried heritage is important to the future. These places matter to our economy, to job growth, to tourism, providing housing, even as a tool in addressing climate change, and just obviously as resources to better understand our own culture and so much more. We will explore some of these topics, just a taste of these today and tomorrow. And I often observe that people look to visit historic places elsewhere when they go away, but sometimes they don't always appreciate what we have here at home. And so sometimes I guess it's human nature to not be able to see what's right under our noses. And that's the mission of Preservation Delaware, is to try to highlight our Delaware historic resources and elevate them and give them greater protection. So thank you for being here with us today. Thank you for your support. We need all of you to be champions of historic resources and ambassadors in our mission. So appreciate you being with us today. I'm going to turn things over to Rebecca Wilson, who is going to get our first session started.
Good morning, everyone. The session that we're about to partake is Exploring UD's Old College and National Historic District. And our speakers today are Chandra Reedy and Anna Wick. Chandra Reedy is a professor of the Biden School and affiliated with the Center for Historical Architecture and Design, known as CHAD. She also directs the Biden School's graduate certificate program in historic preservation and teaches classes to find that program and electives for the MA in the Urban Analytics and Policy and the BA in Public Policy. In her laboratory for analysis of cultural materials, she focused on developing innovative methods for documenting, understanding, and preserving traditional materials, technologies, and intangible cultural heritage. She maintains affiliations with the Departments of Anthropology and Art History and with the Interdepartmental Asian Studies Program. Since 2010, she has served as the Editor-in-Chief of Studies in Conservation, the flagship journal of the International Institute for Conservation of Historic and Artistic Works. She is the author of 4 books and 3 edited volumes, as well as 85 professional articles. She is passionate about identifying what tangible and intangible reminders of the past are most important for the well-being for communities undergoing rapid changes. Anna Wick is Associate Professor of Landscape Architecture and Director of the undergraduate programs Plant and Soil Science. She is a registered and professional landscape architect in Delaware and Pennsylvania, and Associate Professor in the Department of Plant and Soil Sciences. She has designed, documented, and managed construction of many landscape projects in Delaware Valley, working with community and nonprofit partners, including Delaware State Parks, Delaware Historical and Cultural Affairs, Delaware Historical Society, Philadelphia Parks and Recreation, Philadelphia Water Department, the Lenape Indian Tribe of Delaware, and numerous community groups. Anna's courses investigate the relationship between the cultural practice of design and the built environment. She is passionate about equitable design and is interested in historical, social, and cultural influences upon the urban and rural landscape. So, without further ado, I'm turning the program over to Chandra and Anna.
Thanks, Rebecca.
In 1973, Old College and 5 nearby buildings at the University of Delaware in Newark, Delaware, were nationally recognized as the Old College Historic District on the National Register of Historic Places. As most of this audience knows, this National Register program is overseen by the National Park Service, and it's an official list of buildings, groups of buildings called districts, sites, structures, and objects deemed worthy of preservation because of their historical significance. When a nomination packet is submitted, it undergoes rigorous peer review at the county, state, and national levels. The Old College Historic District nomination is now more than 50 years old, and it's very short by modern standards. A similar nomination packet today would easily be 2 to 5 times longer and with much more detail about the significance of the district and the history and documentation of each of the buildings. But it's to the credit of past historic preservationists that they achieved this recognition in the early 1970s for how some of the early campus buildings functioned together in a wider context. Being listed on the National Register doesn't mean a building won't be altered or demolished, but it does help create awareness and appreciation for how the district contributes to the historical character of a place. Much has changed since this 1903 photograph, with the dramatic vertical tree trunks echoing the Greek Revival columns of Old College, contrasting with the sturdy arched stone entranceway to Recitation Hall. My dream would be to obtain the funding needed to fully research how this historic district might be expanded to include more buildings in the historic core of campus, including their historic landscape design, or to create an additional historic district for the core historic part of campus that grew up around and beyond the Old College Historic District. The Old College Historic District includes 6 buildings. Old College, Recitation Annex, Recitation Hall, Alumni Hall, Elliott Hall, and Mechanical Hall. The original sketch map on the left is from the National Register nomination, which emphasized that this small group of buildings formed the nucleus, and until the 20th century, the entire campus of what's now called the University of Delaware. The period of significance was listed as the 19th century, and it was significant for both architecture and education. The university actually traces its history back to the school that began in 1743 in the home of Francis Allison, who was pastor of the New London Church in Chester County, Pennsylvania. That school relocated to Newark, Delaware in 1765 and was chartered as the degree-granting Newark College in 1833. Newark College opened its doors in 1834 when Old College, its first and for many years only building, was completed in the Greek Revival style, featuring a low pitched gable roof and a projecting center block with columns and pedimented porch resembling a Greek temple facade. We've prepared a mobile walking tour of the Old College Historic District, where you can hear or read more detailed information about each of the buildings making up the district. And we invite you to download the QR code and take the walking tour at your convenience. It includes images and discussion of changes in the exterior and interior of buildings and changes in their function over time. And it also discusses the surrounding landscapes. There have been some dramatic exterior changes to some buildings, as with the appearance of the cupola on the roof of Old College in 1853, as seen in the lower left, and its disappearance in 1916. And a 1902 expansion that added the current side porticos to the original central pedimented porch with columns. As we see in the images here, those side porticos weren't there originally. Although they were in the original design for the building, finances apparently didn't allow for them at that time. As the only campus building until 1888, the interior of Old College provided classrooms, student dormitories and lounges, faculty living quarters, a kitchen and dining hall, and the library. It reflected an educational value of its time, the collegial ideal of the campus as a distinct community separate from the town, focused mainly on a classical education. So the Greek temple-inspired building sitting atop a high staircase was very fitting. An expansion of the building in 1902 brought in the missing Greek Revival elements of the original design, adding side porticos to match the central pedimented porch with columns. A 1916 major renovation resulted in the current Colonial Revival interior, and it also provided a good opportunity to remove the cupola that didn't fit the original Greek Revival design. But since those changes, little has changed with the exterior of many buildings in the historic district other than the superficial, as when ivy-covered buildings were prized. And thankfully, that era ended before too much damage to the bricks could occur. The main changes have been with interior configurations to accommodate new uses as the educational mission of the college has changed. The University of Delaware became a land-grant university in 1869. The land-grant program of the federal government funded educational institutions around the U.S. by granting states federally controlled lands that they could then sell to raise funds for college endowments. But in exchange, the colleges were required to add a focus on practical agriculture, science, military science, and engineering. This curriculum expansion posed a requirement for new facilities to accommodate new types of courses. This new focus on practical subjects also reflected a societal change in response to the Industrial Revolution, and also changing ideas of who should be educated, that education was important for all classes of society and not just the elite. This began the decades of expansion of new buildings to accommodate an expanding student body, as well as a changing curriculum. The exterior of Recitation Annex looks remarkably similar to its original 1888 construction as an agricultural experiment station. Although 137 years later, it currently serves the Department of Art and Design. The most striking exterior change occurred with Recitation Hall, built in 1891, also to accommodate the new educational mission for science and engineering instruction. Designed by the Philadelphia architectural firm associated with Frank Furness, it originally featured a central projecting tower incorporating a massive stone arch over the entranceway. The original architectural style imparted a feeling of strength due to the thick brick walls atop a rusticated stone foundation and massive interior beams. But the most distinctive feature of the building was the entranceway. This is the only building in the historic district that was changed for purely aesthetic reasons. In 1968, the decision was made to remove the stone entry arch and replace it with a column portico that would better match the classically inspired style of Old College. While most of the building still reflects the original design, the change in style of the entrance quite definitely affects the appearance and feeling of the building as a whole. Interior changes over the years accommodate the current use by the Department of Art and Design as science and engineering shifted to other parts of campus. Alumni Hall has served numerous different functions over time and has had multiple name changes with many accompanying interior configuration changes. Built in 1809 to be a private home, it was purchased by the college in 1903. It later served as the college library, a fraternity house, faculty offices, and now is used by the Alumni Association. Elliott Hall, the oldest building in the group, dating to the 1770s and also built to be a private home, has also served many functions over the years. In the 1917 Day and Clodder Unified Campus Plan for the growing Delaware College, and also in the 1919 Marion Coffin Landscaping Plan, this building was shown as removed. But the significance of it being one of the oldest structures in Newark may have led to its preservation. An extensive modern addition in the rear adds internal space and allows ADA compliance while not affecting the historical character of the building. You can't see it from the front. So it's an excellent example of change for the purpose of adaptive reuse that aids preservation by allowing continued use of the building. Construction on Mechanical Hall began after an 1898 fire destroyed wooden shops that had housed the Department of Engineering behind Old College. High interior ceilings with heavy wooden beams created a space that worked well for engineering teaching and research. Over the years, the function here too changed many times, with interior additions of partitions and plaster and lowered ceilings to accommodate those new uses. The most recent renovation in 2004 removed most of those interior changes. to create art gallery and collection storage spaces that fit well with the original high ceilings and wooden beams. The only exterior change is a subtle glass vestibule entrance to the gallery on the side of the building. The landscapes surrounding the Old College Historic District buildings, though, have undergone more changes over time than the buildings themselves. Anna will be discussing those.
Great, thank you, Chandra. And thanks, everyone. Happy Halloween. I'm going to be talking to you a little bit more about the landscape context within which these buildings that comprise the Old College Historic District sit. But first, I wanted to more generally introduce the concept of cultural landscapes. There are many different definitions used to describe this concept. My favorite definition comes from the UNESCO Article 1 from the 1992 World Heritage Convention, that cultural landscapes are the combined works of nature and of man that illustrate the evolution of human society and settlement over time, under the influence of physical constraints and or opportunities presented by their natural environment, and of successive social, economic, and cultural forces, both external and internal. This definition is powerful for me in that it touches on the idea that no landscape is a single moment in time. While humans make very specific choices about how land is used and settled and buildings are developed upon it, the land very much dictates human use as well. While the National Register Historic District designation identifies that the landscape contributes to the significance of the overall composition of the district, looking at a place through the lens of the cultural landscape goes beyond a singular moment of significance to underscore the action of nature and of time on place, and this can go back millions of years. Additionally, it's important to recognize that the National Park Service identifies 4 cultural landscape categories: historic designed landscapes, historic vernacular landscapes, historic sites where something deemed historically significant happened, as well as ethnographic landscapes. These categories help to distinguish the values that make them cultural resources and determine how they should be treated, managed, and interpreted. In essence, exploring cultural landscapes allows us to better understand our buildings and the way that they are organized. The buildings inform and are informed by their natural surroundings and represent our cultural values in the way that we treat our built and natural environments. So we can see how the Old College Historic District functions in this way in this earliest 1875 stereometric photo. You can see how lush the linden allée is and the shady canopy, the dense planting of the trees provide for the young college men for whom Old College was the singular campus building. The Greek Revival style building, with its steep stairs and pedimented porch, exemplified and symbolized the prestige of higher learning through architectural signals. The surrounding landscape was laid out to complement this by the inclusion of the allée of 16 linden trees, Tilia species, closely planted, and these framed the center path to the entrance and echoed the plantings popular in European Beaux-Arts gardens. This grand avenue would have been the pathway to higher learning, feeling lofty and perhaps intimidating to these young men. In addition, the landscape would have served as both an entrance sequence and a refuge, probably nice and shady at certain times of year for the young men studying at this earliest version of University of Delaware. Many national historic landmarks have cultural landscapes associated with them. And to give another example, I wanted to share this one from Manzanar Orchard, which is located at the Manzanar Historic Site. This is the best preserved Japanese-American War Relocation Center operated by the U.S. federal government between 1942 and 1945, and does represent a National Historic Park, but also has a cultural landscape associated with this. Cultural landscapes are documented through cultural landscape inventories, and these include the landscape characteristics to contribute to the significance of these sites as cultural landscapes. Some of these characteristics include the natural systems and features, the spatial organization, land use, circulation, cultural traditions, and so on and so forth, especially including the archaeological influences or significance of the site. So we can start to see the implications of looking at the Old College Historic District through the cultural landscape lens by zooming out from that stereometric photo to this 1890 image, which shows us a much quieter main street in Newark, 25 years before the university purchased the green, which sits adjacent across Main Street. The cultural landscape that we see here shows that the university was separated then as now by this iron fence that surrounds the Old College Historic District. And with the kind of emptiness of the space in the background really sets Old College up sort of high on the hill of the White Tower of Academia, I guess we could consider this. We can also start to see that while it's not very bustling in this image, Main Street is starting to be defined by mature street trees, utility poles, and lighting, as well as a fountain. Let's zoom out even further to understand the greater landscape implications of the surrounding area on the development of the Old College Historic District. In 1764, Delaware College, now University of Delaware, moved to Newark. Before residents of European descent lived here, there was a long geological and landscape history, followed by a long history of indigenous occupation of the land. Newark's location at the fall line between two physiographic regions and between the White Clay Creek and Christina River, both flowing to the Delaware River, made it a desirable location for the original Lenape inhabitants and later Swedish, Dutch, and English settlers. The White Clay was called Swapaxiska by the Lenape, translated into Whitlerskill by the Dutch, and eventually took on the anglicized version of the White Clay Creek, which it retains today. Delaware's fall line represents where the metamorphic rocks of the Piedmont physiographic province subside beneath the sediment of the coastal plain. This line traces roughly along what is Kirkwood Highway today, right through Newark. Adjacent to the fall line, waterfalls and rapids were common, which encouraged colonists to settle in this region to power their mills. Note the agricultural and open nature of the land north of Cleveland Avenue and the stark contrast with the now developed city of Newark in this 1947 aerial. In the 1868 Beers map, the train tracks roughly parallel what is now Kirkwood Highway, which runs into Main Street. The fall line is generally parallels this, just a little bit north, as you can see in the previous slide. The uses of the campus buildings have significantly changed over time as well. In this photograph, taken between 1895 and 1897, which looks southwest over the tract once used as an experimental farm and later landscaped as a portion of Fraser Field, we see a completely varied landscape from what we see today. We see the men's gym, no longer in existence, recitation hall, the agricultural experimentation, no longer existing wood shop, old college hall, a greenhouse, also missing today, as well as President Rob's house, which is gone, but remembered in the name of Rob Hall, which sits on the corner of North College and Main Street. With the movement of the College of Ag and Natural Resources to South Campus in 1907, the land use and sense of place of the old college campus core shifted as well, and Fraser Field was dedicated for sports in 1912. Day and Clotter's 1948 rendering of campus shows a newly organized campus layout, prioritizing athletics over agriculture in this district and extending down into the green. This is still reflected in the use of Fraser Field today for intramurals, club, and other sports, which can be seen in both of these images, taken more than a century apart. With the surging popularity of athletics creating demand for the development of much enlarged campus stadiums and athletic facilities and tailgating places on South College Avenue, we can see a clear example of how our cultural landscapes reflect our changing values over time. In 1919, Marion Coffin, the famed professional landscape architect responsible for the design of many prominent landscapes in Delaware and the surrounding areas, as well as across the entire Mid-Atlantic, wrote the following of this area in her descriptive report for the State College of Delaware. The men's college clusters about the fine old college hall, happily restored to its original aspect, which gives dignity and character to the otherwise rather scattered and heterogeneous collection of buildings, including recitation hall, the gymnasium, and mechanics hall of a later and less fortunate period of architecture. Here is the present center of student activity for work and play. The large athletic field is already in existence, well placed back of the gymnasium. Another convenient and separate entrance is planned for this from Main Street, passing by the proposed fraternity buildings with their small quadrangle gardens for the use of the members. In this plan rendering, you can see the proposed idea for extending the green north of Main Street, which, as we know, never occurred. The immediate design landscape of the old college building has not transformed too much in the modern era. In this 1895 photo, we can see the stately alley of 16 linden trees, as well as a prominent fountain. I want to note that earlier in this slide presentation, we had this mislabeled as a 1920 photo, but as Chandra remarked, this cupola was removed in 1916, so it would definitely not be a 1920 photo. Note that we can see this stately alley of 16 linden trees, as well as the prominent fountain, and even some soap commercials on the trees. Note that around 2003, all but 2 of the historic linden alley were removed after being severely impacted by the destruction of Hurricane Isabel. Lindens are a non-native tree and do tend to suffer from many diseases. They are also tend to be a softer wood, and so in 2005, native swamp white oak, Quercus bicolor, were selected and installed to replace the non-native linden. And you can see there's quite fewer of those than the 16 linden that were true to the historic design. This demonstrates also a modern commitment to plantings that support wildlife and ecosystem services. Also, please note the updated paving design with donor recognition that replaced the historic brick walkway, as well as the inclusion of comfortable bench seating to support the campus community. In 2024, 2 of the Quercus bicolor were lost due to bacterial leaf scorch, a disease for which there is no immediate cure, just the use of management strategies. While this disease does not kill trees immediately, the tree will decline over a period of 5 to 10 years. This can be noticed by the marginal leaf scorch that starts on the outer branches and moves inward and causes branch dieback. Those 2 oaks were replaced by 2 larger caliber swamp white oak, and the UD Landscape and Facilities team is actively monitoring and proactively managing the alley through best practices to mitigate the loss of additional trees through fertilization and selective pruning. The cultural landscape of the Old College Historic District goes beyond the plant material and organization of buildings to encompass the approaches to and views from the site. While in the 19th century, the buildings making up the historic district formed the entire campus of Delaware College, this has clearly changed over time. As the college grew to university status, the campus expanded to the opposite side of Main Street. In this image, you can notice the old gas station and newspaper headquarters, which are in the location where the Trabant Student Center sits today. The streetscapes, approach, and surrounding infrastructure inform the experience of campus. The introduction of the formal Georgian-style dorms along the green and brick wall around campus in the early 20th century expanded the campus core and changed the visual presence of the university, as well as the relationship of the university to the town of Newark. Likewise, Main Street, a hallmark of the university experience, has also changed considerably over time. In 1910, horse and buggies crowded the dirt road, shifting to automobile traffic in the 1950s, and accommodating ever greater numbers of cars and deliveries into the 21st century. As the university changes and expands, so too do the infrastructural needs of its surrounding context. So what is the importance of a historic district? I think one of the most important things is really this documentation and identification of why this is significant to the sort of space between buildings, the place we inhabit as humans. But we have to note that historic districts change, and the period of significance may change, and they could be expanded. After more than 50 years, I think that it could be useful to do this for the Old College Historic District. Perhaps to look to the historic core of campus, maybe create a separate historic district for Marion Coffin's landscape plan and Dayan Clotter's campus plan. This could expand the level of documentation, expand the nomination, and tie UD's buildings and landscape architecture into larger regional and national trends. Also, we could develop more walking tours to increase awareness and appreciation for both the buildings and the landscapes. A large goal of this is to prevent anything in the historic core from being demolished in the future, although just being in a historic district does not necessarily prevent demolition. But I think even more than this, it's just preserving the sense of place that has become so important to so many University of Delaware students, alumni, faculty, staff, and community members. In addition to considering the architectural features of the historic district, we can also look at other less physically tangible aspects of the district that might be significant for the designation, such as the importance of Doherty Hall to the LGBTQIA community at University of Delaware, which housed the early gay student union in the 1970s, as well as the importance of the postmodern and Gothic revival mashup design of the Trabant Student Center by Denise Scott Brown and Robert Venturi in the early 1990s. This is one of Delaware's only, if the only, postmodernist building notable for challenging the earlier ideals of modernist architecture. While Trabant's age is not currently eligible for the National Register, we should be thoughtful about considering its impact as we inch closer to its 50-year anniversary, and Chandra will be sharing some more information about this later in the presentation. With the addition of these and many other buildings to the historic district or the historic understanding and documentation of campus, we strengthen this understanding not only of architecture, but of the important cultural, social, and political influences on our campus.
One reason for raising more awareness about the historical importance of more of the buildings surrounding the current Old College Historic District is to try to avert unnecessary changes to their historic character. This summer, the colorful, oversized illuminated letters in the Trabant interior main hallway that were part of the original design of Robert Venturi and a contributor to his carefully crafted postmodern aesthetic were removed. Apparently, there were some who did not appreciate Venturi's design aesthetic. Could we go to the next slide? Oh, no, okay. The arched neon lights that line the high ceilings of the hallway were left in place, but the high illuminated letters that used to run much of the length of the Trabant interior were replaced with flags from the various countries represented by the UD student body. Without a wider appreciation of what gives buildings their character and why certain choices were made at the time of their design and construction, this may continue to happen. Of course, UD campus buildings have seen many changes over the years, mostly interior ones, and those occur in every generation so that new and evolving uses can be made of those structures. But when changes are made purely because of changing tastes, such as the major change to the entranceway of Recitation Hall that took place in the 1960s, and to the Robert Venturi postmodern interior this summer, future generations, I think, are more likely to look back on those changes with dismay because they were never necessary for the continued use of the building.
As we see major changes in both our nation's historic architecture and historic landscapes happen in real time, the need to preserve or at least document the significant architectural and landscape influence on our shared public realm and understanding of history is imperative. The recent example of the east wing of the White House, which I think has rightfully sparked ire, is not the first time the White House has undergone significant restoration. Indeed, anecdotally, Harry Truman's daughter's piano apparently went through the floor of her sitting room when he was elected in 1948 after World War II kind of took the country's focus away from preserving the White House. And at that time, it required $5.4 million to renovate in 2 years. And while I don't have all of the details, because this happened in 1948, before the passage of the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966, I think we can agree that we've gotten better since then at historic documentation and preservation.
Some historic preservationists have noted that this one example is currently being met with many loud outcries, but often only a handful of diehard preservationists object to historic resources coming down regularly in pretty much every community and every state, perhaps to make way for a new Wawa or new student housing, and it seems that little can be done to prevent that.
Buildings tend to ignite more awareness and outspoken calls to arms, although local examples of demolition by neglect are regular occurrences, as Chandra mentioned. What happens, however, when the landscape is fundamentally changed? Here we see the Kennedy Center landscape. The Kennedy Center opened in 1971, designed by architect Edward Durrell Stone, with landscape architecture by Sasaki Walker and Associates, as well as Stone's son, Edward Durrell Stone Jr. It features a significant modernist landscape of raised concrete planters interspersed with square fountains. And a few weeks ago, these images of the willows having been completely cut down came to the public. The willows were installed in this grove-like pattern, which was typical of these modernist buildings, especially in front of large windows like this. They almost acted as natural curtains to kind of filter the sun as they came in and also provide a view shed. And this sparked some, but not much, discussion. And I found a few Instagram posts and things. But after some digging, it turns out that one of the challenges of this landscape is that the original design of the concrete planters did not have the depth to support the willow roots, which are deep to seek water. And the willows were having to be replaced and changed on a regular basis. The idea, at least according to some of the sources I found, is that they will be replaced. But something that this brings up for me is that we need to reconsider the original design of our historic landscapes to support new uses, especially as we develop better understandings of the ecological requirements of the systems we're trying to support.
So one idea of ours is that perhaps an expanded or new historic district highlighted with more walking tours, or even the walking tours alone to highlight what's special about some of the buildings and landscapes in UD's core, would help spread appreciation and awareness for what makes them special, bringing wider support for their preservation. And one impetus for developing the mobile walking tour of the Old College Historic District was that almost no one seemed to be aware of the fact that the Old College Historic District existed. But I think there's even less awareness for the significance of the historic landscape surrounding the buildings. So Anna will talk a bit more about that, including a very positive step at University of Delaware.
Again, the Marion Coffin 1919 landscape plan is very important to the history of University of Delaware's campus. And with her 150th birthday coming up next year, it seems a proper time to celebrate her influence on the field of landscape architecture, the University of Delaware, and other significant landscapes of the Mid-Atlantic and North Atlantic by considering the development of a historic district to commemorate her. Also, as a sideline and a shameless plug, the UD Bachelor of Landscape Architecture program will be 10 years old in 2026, and we think it's pretty awesome that we have a landscape architecture program at a campus where one of the first female landscape architects was the campus landscape architect until 1952. Also, keep your ears out and eyes out for an info on an exciting symposium we are planning to celebrate Coffin's influence in Delaware and the Mid-Atlantic in September of 2026 to coincide with her 150th birthday. So Coffin's design, if you don't know, connected the male side of campus, which we've discussed today with the Old College Historic District, and the female side of campus, which was down here on the South Green, connecting that axis through, which met at Memorial Hall, which was the library historically. On the male side of campus, she used a very formal, strong alley of elm trees, regularly placed in straight lines, while on the female side of campus, she used the more gentle, dappled foliage of the honey locust trees in a more naturalistic planting. And she connected the two by a design that was never realized for an amphitheater and kind of naturalistic planting area, the goal of which would become a place for mingling for both the male and female members of the respective campuses before the university became one. Flash forward to this year, and our campus landscape has changed considerably. You can see the addition of Morris Library here, as well as Allison Hall, and Caesar Rodney dorms are just above the image here. However, our LAs are still in existence. The original elms have of course succumbed to Dutch elm disease, but have been replaced initially in the 90s by Zelkova, a non-native plant, but more recently by more resistant elms that can withstand the Dutch elm disease. On the south side of campus, we've maintained the organic layout of the alley of honey locust, some of which have been replaced. But the past several years, the middle of campus, where we saw that organic design, was blocked off to replace the steam lines, which was a significant undertaking. And in the late 90s, early 2000s, Robinson Anderson Summers did design Magnolia Fountain, Magnolia Circle, which is echoes the original Coffin plan, and is a very popular site for our students. Many graduation photos are taken there. It is really beloved. But we were finally able to have access to this center area again, and our campus landscape architect, Josh Twidarski, and facilities director, Tom Flood, who's also a landscape architect, came to us, including Chandra, folks at UD, including Chandra and myself, to ask what our thoughts were about the inclusion of a new LA in the center of campus. And the initial response was, it, seems appropriate, but also, did you think about that sort of initial design idea that Coffin had that was more organic and naturalistic? And they said, yes, they had. And a way that we kind of compromised on this was, well, let's actually, we'll still use elms, the new resistant elms, but we'll have them scattered in a more soft and gentle way, more akin to the honey locust that were on the south side of campus. And so I think this speaks to a thoughtful rethinking of Coffin's original design idea when nothing actually was ever quite realized. In addition, they incorporated new plantings around Memorial Hall. Again, this echoes the changing cultural expectations and needs and understandings. We want to create pollinator habitat. We want to increase biodiversity and soften this area of campus. And I think they've done a lovely job with many natives, but some non-natives, non-invasive, appropriate plantings that soften and increase the aesthetic value of this really important central area of campus. So we think a walking tour would be a good first step to create for the 150th anniversary celebration, but we also do want to at some point consider the idea of expanding the historic district or making a new historic district. And I wanted to share a little bit more about the creation of the walking tour. Chandra and I were approached by a group of folks out of art history who are developing the Colors of Old College exhibition that lasted, it was on display from February to May of this spring. This was an exhibition that got really into the details of the interior preservation of the architecture of Old College and the exterior, comparing paint samples, lots of really great photos. And the ask was to create a walking tour that could accompany this. So we were able to develop this walking tour using a free app called IZI app. We chose this because we didn't have a budget, and it's, you know, important to be able to get things off the ground. So I do recommend this app. They are not paying me for any commercial. I'm just saying that. It's a really easy app to use, and we were able to write script, have it recorded, upload lots of images to this to showcase the kind of the same type of pictures we were showing you today, but even more. So I do encourage you to go look at it. This is something that anyone can access from their smartphone, and it didn't have an end date, so it's still up today, and that's really cool. We do see people continuing to use it. We'd like to get more word out about it and continue to expand offerings like this around the university. So it's geolocated. So as you're walking, the next stop will come up. So you can carry it in your hand and move from stop to stop. The recording will come up, or you can just read and then you can look through the images. And one really neat thing about this is you can look at visit stats and see, you know, where people have been using it over time. You can see that during the exhibit, it was being used a bit more. I mean, I wouldn't say it's, you know, hundreds, but over 20 people are listening to it. But yet we're still getting usage even up into the sixes. This might be actually us looking at it while we're developing this presentation, now that I think about it. But anyway, you get the visitation stats. It's really useful. It's interesting. And so I encourage the use of these type of tools, which can get the important historical information of the cultural landscape and the historic districts into the hands of regular people, to continue to disseminate why these places are so important, and hopefully understand how our cultural, social, and political choices impact our landscapes and buildings as we move into the future. So with that, we are thankful for your time, happy to have any discussion or answer any questions, and thanks again for asking us to share.
Okay, we have a couple of questions. The first one is, without the lettering, Trabant looks like a 1990s mall without acknowledgement of the commercial aesthetic that was part of so many postmodern designs by VSB and others. Are there enough photos to document and provide some interpretation in the building of what has been lost?
I believe there are multiple photos, but it's, since we didn't know that the lettering was coming down, we had no forewarning. In fact, it was Barksdale Maynard who alerted me to it after it had already happened. And so there was no possibility to go and do documentation. We weren't given that opportunity by the university. So there's just photos that we can cobble together that might happen to be around. And the photos that I showed from today were from Barksdale's online collection. But since he wasn't given any forewarning either, I don't know if he ever had the opportunity to document it as to the extent that anyone would have liked. There was no formal documentation done. We did try to get them put back, have something happen with them, but we didn't get any response, I would say. And they're already down and gone when we first learned about it.
Were the letters destroyed?
I don't know. Barksdale would know that better, but he was trying to find them and recover them. We asked for them, but I didn't get any response on that. We would have kept them in the Center for Historic Architecture and Design just in case there would be an opportunity. Oh, there's Barksdale. Yes, all the letters were destroyed. We requested that we be able to salvage them and keep them because we have space. We would have kept them for a future time when I suspect somebody would have been glad to have them put back. But what should have happened is that we be allowed to document that before they were taken. Well, they should not have been taken down. That's the first thing. But given that it was happening, we should have had the opportunity to fully document them, and then they should have been kept rather than being destroyed. That was just a really awful thing.
Next question. The question person has said you did a great presentation, and she believes that a combination of self-guided and guided tours would be appreciated. Is there any downside to the IZI free app? It offers so much.
I don't think that I think it's sort of one of these free apps that has the feel of like using the when to meet. If anyone has ever used that kind of survey based software, like you'll get a lot of ads up and things like that when you're working in it. But on the phone, it seems to work pretty well. I think because it still relies on like the written word, even if, so you can't really make a choice. Like when you're walking through the space, the recording is going to come up. So I think that's one downside. And then it does have a lot of words, and the images can only be so big. It's not going to be as kind of graphically appealing as something that would be a more like commercially developed app. But so I think those are my kind of challenges with it. I actually was introduced to this app years ago and with Rebecca and some of the folks from the National Park Service when they were developing the first state national historic park were using it as a tool to do community engagement. So they would actually have people utilize it to capture places they thought were important in their context and then write information or take photos about them. So in that sense, because it is free, I think it does offer a lot of possibilities for different ways of using. But I don't know. Do you have anything to add to that, Chandra?
Yeah, one thing I like about it is that you can, instead of just using it on the phone, which most people probably would do if they scan the QR code on site and then walk out the door, it can also be accessed online on a computer. So if you have the QR code, it takes you to the URL, and if you're not there, you can't travel to Delaware, but maybe you'd like to do the tour, you can do it on your computer. And I find that nice because you can see the text really large, you can see the photos large, and you can stop and start it easily. So I like that as well. And I think it's just really great that it's free to both the developers and the users. So if you don't have a budget to develop, it's free, but it also means it's easy for a user to just scan the code and then walk out the door and take the tour without having to sign up for anything or pay for anything.
So Anna has put up on the chat the link to go look at the IZI travel.
So if you go to IZI and you do a search, you could put in Old College Historic District and it should take you to our tour. We do have some posters around campus with the QR code. If we can develop more of tours like this, we could have codes on different buildings around campus to launch out to a tour of the green or a tour of Old College District or even some individual buildings. And actually, I've been meaning to put it up on the QR code on the Center for Historic Architecture and Design's website. So if you're not on campus, you can easily get it and take the tour from home.
I have a question. Has anyone done, and I didn't believe that Old College is a National Historic Landmark. Would it be able to have that designation? Would there be someone to do something like that to get it, that designation for it?
It would be possible. We would have it. That's a very extensive process, very time consuming. So, and the staff at the Center for Historic Architecture and Design are all grant and contract funded. So we would have to get funding from that. Ideally, of course, the University of Delaware would be willing to fund such a thing, but the budget is under certain constraints right now, so that's not happening. But there are people on campus who have the Cape Morrissey, for example, certainly has the qualifications to undertake a project like that if we could find a source of funding. And it would be great to incorporate the landscapes and bring in Anna's team as well.
I think Charlie Weymouth, you had your hand up. Maybe if you had a question, you could unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, it's not up where I can
Maybe.
open it.
If not, we'll just keep going.
Charlie, could you write your question in the
Yeah,
chat?
can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay,
Go ahead.
basically I've come in and you both, Chandra Reedy and Anna Wick, for your presentation. Maybe they're a little bit too extensive and it baffles old minds like me. But the campus to me is absolutely unique. Well, maybe University of Virginia contends to some degree, but Yale and Penn have been really forgotten in terms of what you have emplaced and honored in the natural surround at the University of Delaware. It's commendable, and I hope you go. I think my comment also was that I've been down recently for Wilmapco attending this is in Del Dot, and the research campus is an absolute disaster. So I think we really need some green fingers down in that deal. But I think a thing it seems to be lacking in these identification pursuits and in the naturalistic pursuits is frankly, as you've so well done at the University of Delaware, required renewed and adaptive reuse and occupancy of these buildings. And I see that so many of our Delaware entities such as, well, Dickinson, or I see sadly, very sadly at Gibraltar right now, which I'm sure Dee is well involved, is the lack of human occupancy. Because what happens when these things just become dormant, they're forgotten and fall into disclaim. And that is a pursuit that I think HABS and other preservation societies should be really strongly pursuing. And I think I think also at the state level, you really got to watch who you're giving the money to restore these various places. It so often gets diverged off into administratively operating a nonprofit rather than putting it into hard elements. But a good job done today, and I hope to attend tomorrow live to see that you're probably going to be a repeat of a lot of today, but I've got to do a lot of catching up. Thanks very much for listening.
Well, Chandra made a comment before we end this about many people didn't know that the Oak College was a historic district. And I have to tell you, I never knew that for the longest time. However, shortly after it became one, there was a course offered through American Studies called Old College Town and Gown in the late 1970s. And the class did intensive research on Old College, its students, and the town. And I actually took that course taught by David Almendinger. And a lot of the things you brought and pictures you showed today, we used in that course. So things do start out, come around, and stay the same to a degree. Any more questions? Well, thank you for your presentations, and please sign up to come tomorrow, and thank all of our sponsors. The next speaker will be Ryan Grover at 10:35.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye. Thank you both.
Bye, thank you.
So we'll take a little break, everybody, and have Ryan Grover up next at 10:35. So stay tuned, take a little coffee break, hit the bathroom, and we'll see you soon. Oops. Okay, it's now 10:35. So let's continue on with our next presentation. So just a couple notes before we get started. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Kara Smith. I'm on the board of Preservation Delaware, and I'm also co-chair of the Education Committee. In case you weren't here for the first session, I'll just do a couple reminders. Everybody, all our attendees are muted. You can use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to ask questions of our speaker, or you can use the chat function for any technical difficulties. We'll review questions at the end of the presentation. The workshop is being recorded, and it will be available in a few weeks on Preservation Delaware's YouTube channel. And thank you to all our 2025 conference sponsors. They are all listed on our website, so please check that out. And if you aren't already a member, please consider joining, which you can also do on our website. So today we are joined by Ryan Grover, who's speaking on the state of the Rockwood Estate. So we'll explore the past and recent preservation efforts to both protect and popularize this romantic era mansion, garden, art collection, archive, and landscape in his talk titled Past and Present at the Shipley Bringhurst Hargraves House. Ryan is the director of the Rockwood Park and Museum and the administrator of Newcastle County's Public Arts Commission. Before that, he was the Sewell C. Biggs curator at the Biggs Museum of American Art. And he's also had several adjunct professor positions with the University of Delaware, Delaware State University, and the Delaware College of Art and Design for Art History and Museum Studies. And he's also served on numerous regional boards, including the Delaware Disaster Assistance Team and Delaware Foundation for the Visual Arts. He received his BA and MA in art history from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and we are very grateful to have him here today to present to us. So with that, Ryan, please take it away.
Awesome, thank you. Let me share. Awesome, can you see my screen? Looks like you can.
Yes, yep.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So I'm representing Rockwood Park and Museum, or what we like to call the Shibley Bringhurst Hargraves family, based upon the sort of the three extensions of the single family that owned it for about 120 years, starting in about 1851. The bulk of the paper that I'm giving today was a presentation that I gave to Newcastle County Council. Technically speaking, the stewards and owners of Rockwood Park and Museum in 2022 to talk about a sort of renomination process that we were going through for the National Register of Historic Places, sort of a renom application for that. And it was a way for us to start talking about the renomination, but also the presentation itself as a way to be able to start talking to not only the county executive's office, but also to county council and to the public at large about all the new areas of reinterpretation, the sort of expanded view that we had taken on with Rockwood in more recent years. I started as its director about 4 years ago, and the first job that I was given kind of on day one was to take a couple of large bank boxes of research that had been conducted for this renomination process by a really terrific group of volunteers and turned it into an actual renomination application. So trial by fire, but I learned a lot and was able